Hi friends, welcome to Ofa Studies YouTube channel. This is part 4 in PySpark playlist. In this video, we are going to discuss about how we can write a data frame data into CSV file using PySpark. So please watch previous videos inside this PySpark playlist where I have discussed a high level overview of what is PySpark, and also I have discussed how to create a data frame with a hard coded values, and in the last previous video we discussed how we can read data from CSV file. So this is continuation. All the videos are in a sequence order. So I encourage you to watch videos in the sequence order. So in this video, as I said, we will be discussing about how we can write data into CSV file using a PySpark. And also while writing the data, we can there are multiple options available for you to save into a CSV file. So what are those options? We are going to see that. And also there are something called saving modes. So when you are saving data into a CSV file, there are a couple of modes available like append mode, and also there is something called ignore mode, and also there is something called overwrite mode. So what are these modes and when to use these modes and what is the exact functionality of each mode? That is what we are going to discuss in this video. So let's go to the next slide, and here you need to use, there is something called write method in the PySpark data frame object which you have to use it. So actually it's not a write method, it's a object actually. So here it is a wrong, it's not a method, it's a object. So there is something called data frame writer class. For this class there is a object called write object which is available on top of the data frame. So using that object you can use .csv method along with couple of options methods as well, or you can directly provide the options inside the CSV method itself and then write the data frame back to your CSV files. So if all this, if it is not making sense at this moment, let me practically show you this, then you will try to understand that. So firstly, what I said, there is something called a data frame writer object, and inside that object there is something called .csv function that will actually help you to log to write the data frame data back to your storages. So it can be storage, it can be Databricks file system, it can be Synapse file system, whatever it is. Okay, so let me practically show you that so that you will make sense of it. So let's go to browser. So in my browser I have already opened my Synapse Databricks workspace account, and if I go to compute, you can see there is one cluster which is already running. So now let's go to workspace. Under my name, let me go to users, then under users, my name. Here let me try to create a new notebook, and let me try to name this notebook as like write df to CSV. That means write data frame to CSV. That is what the name of the notebook I want to give, and it's a Python notebook, and this is the cluster which I am attaching with the notebooks. So let me hit that create button to create this notebook. Now notebook is created. So here I said there is something called data frame write object. So if I go to presentation, data frame writer object, right? So that means there is a class with this data frame writer. So let me practically show you that. So from PySpark dot SQL library, so there is something called PySpark SQL import star, import everything. Okay, so let me hit shift enter to execute this cell alone first. So it's imported. Now if you see, there is something called let me hit enter, there is something called data frame writer class. You can see here. So this data frame writer class is inside PySpark.sql. That's why I imported that. Star means it will import everything from this library. So let's try to use this data frame writer, and let's go to home, and let's try to use a help function on top of this class to see the documentation of this particular method. So let me hit shift enter to execute this code, and if you see data frame writer, it's a class actually, and also if I scroll down it will have a complete definition, and inside this there is something called a CSV method which can take all these parameters, and for each and every parameter what kind of data we can pass, it was clearly mentioned inside this parameters section. And not only that, you can see few examples also here. So this is a full documentation. So with this documentation it is clear that data frame writer class has a function called .csv that will help you to write data into the CSV function. So this is the function, or this is the method, you can call any name. So this is the method which will actually use to do that. Now from where we will get this data frame writer object, right? So we have to get this object, then only on top of that object we can use this CSV function, right? So how to get it? So there is something called so where the data frame is available actually. So inside this PySpark.sql, if I remove this star and if I press control space, there is something called data frame module as well, right? So let's use this data frame module, and that means let's try to import this data frame module. Then inside this data frame module we will be having a data frame class as well. Let me practically show you that. So I am importing this data frame module here. So let's try to pass this data frame module to the help function, and let me hit shift enter button. So once I do that, now if you closely observe, there is something called data frame class inside that data frame module. And if you see, this is a module whatever I am trying to see the documentation, and inside this data frame module, if I scroll down and there is a description, you can go through this entire description also if you want. So there is a data frame class as well. That means this data frame class is there, right? Now inside this data frame class, if I scroll down, there will be a write read only property as well. So let me scroll down and let me try to show you that write read only property as well. So there is something called create temp view function that will create a view. So all that actually we will discuss in our upcoming videos. So it is a very big documentation of this data frame class. If you want to go through, you can go through that, but I am directly going to a property called write property. And if you see, this write property will help you to save the content, right? And this write property type is actually data writer type only. So if I go back to presentation, data frame writer documentation, just now we have seen, right? So this class object only that write property will hold actually. So let me practically show you that as well here. So here, so let me use dot inside a data frame module. There is something called data frame class. You can see data frame class, and then inside this class, if you see, there is something called write function is also there. Okay, and also there is some. So once you create an object of this data frame, there will be a write object also will be coming. So what I can do is here data frame dot write. I can use it. Let me hit shift enter. And see, this is a property. This property holds a object of a data frame type actually. So let's not worry about this documentation if you are not making much sense, but try to have a habit of reading the documentations when you are going through the initial phase of learning. So once after some time you will be used to. Okay, so with this we came to a clarity that there is something called data frame writer object that will help you. So now let me do one thing. So let's try to create a data frame with some hard coded value. So let me try to create a variable called data. So inside this variable, let me try to add a collection of tuples. In the first tuple, I am using two items, one and then name is Mahir, then comma. Let me enter a second item into the list, and in the second item, first in the second item I am entering a tuple, and inside a tuple 2 is the first item value, and then Wafa maybe. So this is like a list of tuples, and these are going to become a rows in my data frame. So I will be creating a new data frame now, and let me try to create a variable called schema. So if you don't know what is tuple list and the syntax what I am writing, please watch my Python playlist. Why? Because all the code whatever we are writing here is actually a Python code. So for a schema variable also, let's try to create a list of strings. So first item name is id, I mean value is id, and second item value is name. So this is like a strings, right? Two strings inside a list, and here two tuples inside a list. So once we created that, so let me try to use a Spark object that is going to be like a Spark session object. This is all we have discussed already. After that, I am pressing control space for intelligent. Now there is something called create data frame function. So let me use that function, and then here to this function there is something called data param. For that parameter, let me pass this data variable. So let me copy this variable here and let me pass it here, and then control space, there is something called schema. For a schema input parameter also, let me pass my schema variable here. So this is going to create a data frame, right? So let me say like df equals to, so this data frame. So once the data frame is created, let me try to display that data frame whatever we created. So let me hit shift enter to execute this code now, and now if you see, our data frame is created successfully, and we have id column, name column, one id. See, these two are like rows. Okay, so now let's assume this data frame I want to write it to a CSV file, and that CSV file I will be writing it into a data frame file system only. In real-time scenarios, you can write that to your storage accounts as well. So for that, you will be creating a mount points and other things. I have already discussed all that in the Databricks playlist, and also if it is a Synapse, I have discussed in the Synapse playlist. So please watch there. So now here inside this dbfs, maybe I want to have a temp folder. Inside the temp folder, I want to load this data as a CSV files. So let's try to do that and see what will happen and how to do that actually. So df is a data frame, right, which contains our data. Then dot, when I say control space, there is something called, you can see there is something called write instance. That means a write object. So this write object type is data frame writer type only. So to know that, you can use this type of and let me hit shift enter. That will give you, so this is like a data frame writer type, right? So that is what I said in my slide also. Data frame writer type object will contain a write. On top of that write, you can use either options and mention if it is a CSV file, like header equals to true, and maybe the separator or a delimiter, like I want to keep commas. CSV file means comma separated file, right? So I hope everyone knows what is CSV file means, right? So that means the data will be in this fashion. So let me quickly explain you that also in 10 seconds. So let me open a notepad here. So if in the notepad, if I have like id comma name, then 1 comma Mahir, then 2, so this is like a CSV file kind of data. So this is how the CSV file data will be there. This, if I save this file as a CSV file, and if I double click and open, it will open in Excel, and it will give you two columns, id column and name column. So that's how. So CSV file will be having some separator or delimiter between each column. So what kind of symbol you want to use it? You want to use it either comma, you want to use it either pipe symbol, so that you can provide it. So all that you can provide using this options method. Okay, and then on top of that, you can use a CSV function to store that data frame data. But is this mandatory to always use this syntax? No. You can direct on top of this writer object, you can directly use a CSV method, and inside a CSV method itself, there are a lot of parameters that will give the same options that you can pass it. Let me practically show you that. So let's go back to our notebook here, and here if you see, let's try to use this help function on top of this data frame dot write. So let me hit shift enter to execute this command, and the command executed successfully. Now if you see, it is a data frame writer type, and if I scroll down, and there will be something called CSV function also. See, CSV function. So on top of this writer object, you can directly use a CSV function, and to the CSV function you can supply the path where you want to create that CSV file, means store that CSV file, and you can specify mode also. Like if the file is already there, if the path is already exist, then what you want to do? You want to ignore, you want to throw error, or you want to append the data. So all that kind of things. And also you can mention the separator. Separator means the delimited one. So whether you want to use comma as a delimiter or pipe symbol or whatever it is. And if your file contains like first row as a header, then you can mention that as well. So you can directly use this CSV method also, and I will encourage you guys to do that instead of doing like this, like instead of using these options separately, then .csv. That will make you little complex, right? At least from the readability point of view. So I will prefer to use this CSV function directly, and what I will do, I won't use the parameters directly. I will use the parameter name equals to then the value. That way I can make sense what value is going into what kind of parameter. So I will be not using this code in my practical demo. So you can try this code, whatever you are seeing in the slide. I will directly use this CSV function. So now here data frame, see here data frame is ready, and this data frame, let's try to, on top of the data frame there is something called write object or instance. So on top of that there is something called a CSV function, and on top of here also you can directly use a help function to know the documentation of it. So if I hit shift enter, it will give you the entire documentation of the CSV function as well. Okay, so I'm not going through this documentation, you can read it. So now what I will be doing is here, so let me try to use df.write dot, there is something called CSV function. To this CSV function, control space, there is something called path parameter. So here I have to supply a path. So what I will be doing, so I want inside this Databricks file system, let me go to Databricks file system. I want to have a TMP folder, and inside that I want to store this data as a CSV. So let's do that. So here df.write.csv path. So to the path Databricks file system, right? So dbfs:/ sorry, I entered wrongly, dbfs, then colon slash, then I want to have a tmp folder. So inside that folder, maybe employees emp. So this is the directory where I want to store the data, then comma, then you can use this header. You can see there is a header parameter, so I will mention header equals to true. That means my data contains a header, column header, so take that as a first row. So you can use this. Now if I execute this, it is going to save the data. And if you see, if I say comma, and or if you see the documentation here, there is something called a mode parameter. So to this mode parameter, if you see, you have to supply a string value, and you can supply this append. That means it appends the content to the existing data. So if this directory already has a csv files and data, then it will simply append the content. You can use a overwrite also. That means already data has here inside this directory, then that data will be removed, and the whatever the data now you have in the data frame, that data will go and store there. You can use a ignore. That means if the file is already, or if the directory is already there, then don't do anything, simply ignore, don't throw any error. But if you use error, then if the directory is already there, it will show you that already data is there, so that error will come. And this is the default mode. So if I don't use mode equals to anything like this, then in that case mode error will be taken. So let me practically show you that. So here let me hit shift enter now. So it is executing a command now here, and you can see spark job execution is in progress, and let's wait for the execution to complete. Now if you see, spark job executed successfully. Now if I go to data, and if I go to dbfs, and if you see temp folder created, and inside a temp folder see employees folder created, and if I go, so this is like a, all these files are like a csv files actually. So when I hover it, you can see the tooltip, the extension is .csv. Now if you closely observe, let's go back to the data folder, data menu, and dbfs, and if I go to temp employees, we see all this data as a part to files, right? Why that happens is, usually what will happen in a spark is, spark will having something like a driver node and worker nodes. So driver node will be top, and worker nodes will be like a slave nodes. So under driver node many worker nodes will be there. So let me explain you that with a simple diagram here. So let's assume this is a driver node, and from this driver node any execution will be given to the worker nodes. If you have a 3 worker nodes, the data the execution will be given to 3 worker nodes like this. So like this. So now what will happen, all these 3 worker nodes will take that data by partitioning into 3 partitions, and it will process the data, and finally it will store that every processed data, that means every partition data, as a separate part file. So by seeing 3 part files in my case, that means 3 executions or 3 partitions were there on top of my data, and it processed and it stored the data in such fashion. So you can imagine like that actually. So now you will be getting another doubt, like why we have these file names like this, part, and what are these 3 file names which we have at the top. So those 3 files are like something related to logs or execution, so we no need to worry. So those are specific to Spark, but these 3 files contains your data. But majorly people will be doubting, I want entire data into a single file, and also that data maybe I want like employees.csv. So that's how I want to get a file name. So will that possible? It is not directly possible using this kind of code, using this write.csv function, but you can do it. There are some workarounds are there, we will discuss that in our upcoming videos. So let's not worry about that. But what you can do, if you don't want these 3 partition files here, and you want only 1 partition file, that you can do it. What you have to do, before this write, on top of a data frame there is something called repartition function. So there is something called let me use control space to get intelligence. So to this repartition function you need to pass number 1 here. That means only create 1 partition and then load it. So that you can do it, but let's not worry about that, we will discuss that in our upcoming videos. So now we executed this, that means data written into a csv files. So now let's try to execute a read data frame, and that means load the data from this directory csv files into a data frame and see whether we actually got data or not. So we have discussed that in our last video, right? So we need to use something called spark dot read dot csv function. To the csv function we can supply a path to the path parameter. So there is something called path parameter, and then inside that csv files we have a header. So let's use a header equals to true, and this is going to give a data frame back. So now let's try to wrap this entire code into a display function, so that data frame we can display back. So let me hit shift enter now to execute this, and once the execution completed, I can see I have these two employee IDs, right? Employee ID 1 and employee ID 2. So that is what we have created a data frame here, and then we saved it into a CSV file, right? So everything is fine. And as I said, when I am writing data to a CSV, if I don't use any mode here, then automatically mode will be error. So that means even if I don't do anything, it is something like this, mode append. Okay, so that is the reason. Sorry, not append, error. So there is something called mode error, right? We have just not discussed that, right? So that means if this directory is already there, then it will error. If the directory is not there, then it won't give any error. So right now directory is already there, right? We just now written the data into directory, and data is there. We have read the data into a data frame, and we have seen it also here. So now if I use this mode equals to error explicitly, or if I don't use explicitly, both are same only. Now if I re-execute this code, it is going to error saying already the directory is available. Why? Because mode error means if the data is already there, if the directory is already there, then give an error. So let me hit shift enter and see what will happen. You can see command executing successfully, but it throws an error saying this directory already exists. What if it should not give this error? It should maybe simply ignore this. So in that case, we need to use mode equals to ignore. Okay, so if you forgot what I am saying, all these modes and all, let me copy this, and here in the last, right? So let me use a help function. To the help function, let me pass this, and let me hit shift enter and see the documentation once again. So there is something called mode parameter. To the mode parameter, we can pass ignore, overwrite, error we have seen just now. If the path is there, then it will throw exception. So if you use ignore, if the path is there, then nothing will happen. It will simply ignore the execution. Okay, so let me try to use that. Overwrite will overwrite the data. If data is already there, the entire data will go, and whatever I am saving this time, that data will be stored. Append means it will append the data. So let me practically show you that. Let me close this entire window here, I mean entire cell here, and then let's go. Let me close this cell as well, and then here right, I am using a mode equals to ignore this time, and we already have this directory. So let me hit shift enter once again. Let's try to write the data into this. So it is simply ignoring it. There is no error. Now if I execute this one where I am reading the data from the directory, I will be still seeing 2 rows only. So let me hit shift enter to execute this command here. You can see command execution is in progress. We have still 2 rows only. What if I use mode equals to overwrite? So overwrite. So what it will do, if the directory is already there, and inside the directory if we have data already, then again this data frame will be written there. So that means right now we have 2 rows, right? Again, so and inside this data frame we have 2 rows, right? So these 2 rows will be again written into this path. So that means when I read the data from the path, then we will be having a 4 rows. Let me practically show you that. So let me execute this command 2 now by hitting shift enter. See, command is running now, and command will execute successfully within few seconds. Let's wait for the execution to complete here. So command executed successfully, and this time let's execute this command 3 where we are reading that same path and displaying the content. So let me hit shift enter. See, command is executing, and now if you see, we will be having a totally 4 rows. 1 second. So we still have 2 rows. Why? Let me check. Something is wrong. Let me re-execute this or else. So let me hit shift enter to execute this, and now let me execute this once again to display this data frame here. Okay, we are still getting 2 rows only. There is something wrong. Let me check. Oh, sorry, it is behaving correctly only, right? Overwrite means it has to overwrite the existing data, right? So I was thinking like it is append. So overwrite means we already have a 2 rows in the path. That 2 rows, once again, if you execute whatever we have inside this path, that will be deleted, and the freshly this data frame whatever it contains, that will get loaded. So this data frame contains the 2 rows always. So that is the reason how many times ever we execute this cell, we always see the 2 rows only. So to make this sense, let's use this append first. So we have to use the append mode first, so that you can make sense of it. So what this append mode will do, here inside a path, if you already have some data, then right now I am going to take this data frame and write it into this path. That means let's assume here we have 2 rows already, right? We just now seen it here, and this data frame again has a 2 rows, right? So totally 4 rows it should be having inside this path after this command execution. So let me hit shift enter to execute this command. So now data is getting appended into this path, and now if I execute this, I will be having a 4 rows. Now clearly observe it. See, the read function is executing. See, we have totally 4 rows. Why? Because previously this path has 2 rows, and we have seen that, and we used a mode append, that means append the content, and we are appending this data frame content. So again the 2 rows will come. So totally 4 rows. Now if I re-execute this once again, totally 6 rows will come. So let me hit shift enter to execute this command 2. See, command 2 is running here. It executed successfully. Now command 3. Now let me execute this command 3 to see the data in a path using this read.csv function. You can see totally 6 rows we got. So what append will do? All the CSV files, it will start appending into that path. So how many times you run, those many part files will keep on append there. That means on top of a directory, if you read the content, you will see all the data is getting appended. Okay, so now let's try to use a overwrite function to make sense of it, what I am saying. So now if I use overwrite, this path contains 6 rows, right? Everything will be get removed, and this data frame right now, it contains only 2 rows. So those 2 rows will come and land in the path, and old data will be overwritten. So that means gone, old data gone. So now let me try to execute this command 2 by hitting a shift enter. See, command 2 is running here, so it has to delete the data and then overwrite the data with this data frame data. So that's the reason overwrite will take little time. See, now it is overwrite done. Now if I execute this, in the output I will be seeing only 2 rows. Let me hit shift enter to execute this command 3. So it is executing here. Now if you see, we got only 2 rows. So that means data is getting overwritten. So all these modes are very important when you are working in a real time. So that's the reason I practically shown you that. Okay, so now again, as I said, don't worry why these part files and everything is coming here. So in our upcoming videos in the future, we will discuss how to avoid these part files if you don't want. So what is the way to do that? Using pandas also you can do it, or using PySpark also you can do it. There is some workaround to do that. So I will explain that in our upcoming videos. Right now, let's not worry about it. So let's go back to presentation. So we have discussed about these saving modes. Overwrite mode will help you to overwrite the existing content. Append mode will try to append the data to the existing content. Ignore will simply ignore if the path is already there, no error. But error mode will give you an error saying path is already there. And if you don't, so the ignore will not give any error. But error mode will give error, and it's a default option if you don't use any mode. Okay, and this is like this also you can use. What I did, right? On top of write, I used the CSV method directly, but you can use mode function separately and then CSV function separately. Or inside a CSV file itself, for a mode parameter, you can pass your values. So whatever the way you want to code, you can code it. Okay. So that's it in this video. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon to get the notification whenever I add videos. Thank you so much.